Here's the biggest mistake I see founders making every day in sales calls. They're pitching to people who have zero intention of buying anything. Today, I'm going to teach you how to identify real buyers from the tire kickers using one simple concept: getting do nothing off the table. So what does it mean to get do nothing off the table? To me, it's when a prospect has admitted that the way they currently do things is broken and they've decided to make a change. It's not necessarily with you, but they've agreed that it would be insane to do nothing. Here's why this matters. First, it separates the tire kickers from the real buyers. Tire kickers are just curious. Real buyers are actually committed to solving a problem. Second, it prevents you from wasting your time on expensive demos and trials with people who just aren't really going to get there. And third, it helps create urgency. Someone who's committed to solving a problem usually wants it solved pretty quickly. So how do you know if do nothing is really off the table? Here's what I like to look for. They're already spending money trying to solve it, even if it's inefficient, like they're hiring people to manually pull data or using expensive workarounds. They've expressed real frustration with their current process, not just mild annoyance. There's possibly external pressure as well, whether it's a new board requirement, investor demands, compliance issues. But here's the biggest one. If you can tie the problem that you found with making them more money, saving them some costs, or decreasing their risk, you have a very good chance of getting do nothing off the table. However, if you don't ask, you'll never know. So let's talk about asking. There are a few different ways you can bring the do nothing off the table question up in a conversation. And a lot of this is going to depend on your relationship with the prospect. If you have pretty good rapport, you can just straight up ask them, hey, is this a priority to solve right now? If you want to soften it because you're maybe a little bit earlier or you're not as confident, you can ask where this sits on their priority list. Is this number 1? Is this 10? Is this at the top of the list? Is it the bottom? If you really want to drive home and you're looking for timing, now this is something I'll use definitely later in the conversation. I'll ask something like, is this a this month, this quarter, or this year problem? And one of my absolute favorites is help me understand. Sometimes you get folks that just don't want to share or aren't maybe getting, they're saying, yes, it's a priority, but they're not, you can feel like it's not the real answer. You can almost ask the inverse question, which is like, help me understand what would happen if you choose not to solve this right now. And then look at the first order and second order and third order consequences. But the most important piece is just to ask. This is not generally a yes or no question. This is something you want to bring up as a topic. Hey, can we talk about this priority level? If you've got great rapport, like I mentioned earlier, you can just straight up ask it. But generally it's a yes, and then you go deeper. Okay, tell me more about this. Tell me about how you see that. Tell me about how you see this. But what you're really trying to understand here is, do you recognize that the way that you're doing things right now would be crazy to continue to do them in that way? One last piece, and I know I mentioned this already, but timing's pretty critical. These are not questions that I ask generally at the top of a call or the beginning of a relationship, because folks don't quite trust you enough to give you this type of information. Generally, after a good 45-hour discovery call, that's normally when I'm going to be bringing up conversations like this. It might even be second call. First, I want to make sure I've established that there is pain that we can solve, that I can tie it to value, like making them more money, saving them costs, reducing risk. And then if I've established that, yes, I have, the tie to value and I have the, quantified pain, then I'm going to go in and say, okay, well, when is the right time? Or is this a priority? Because this is going to tell me, is this something that's going to move forward right now? Or is this a hypothetical project we're thinking about? Let's talk about some red flags that might mean do nothing still is on the table. If they're bringing up future budgets, not, I can spend this from this year's budget, but, I need to allocate this for my next year's budget. If they talk about planning, if they're talking about, next year, obviously, unless you're in December, it's probably not a priority this year. Some signs that do nothing might be off the table already is if they are bringing more people than you're asking them to the calls. And not just those calls where they enterprise bring 30 people, but I mean, they're bringing the additional stakeholders you need, like the tech folks, that are going to sign off on it, the economic decision maker. If they're just adding folks and you don't have to ask them, that's a really good sign. If they're asking about trials or integrations or like how they make it work into their workflow, these are really, really good signs. If they're trying to negotiate terms or they're telling you about their procurement process, these are really, really good signs. I was just talking to one of the founders I work with, and they had a prospect who was paying $1,500 for a trial. Now, this prospect put their credit card in and the payment failed, and they tried again, and they tried again. And I think they said they tried 15 times, and it finally went through. This person has clearly taken do nothing off the table. Compare that to somebody who just wants to see a demo or take a look without sharing any context about their problems. If they're not willing to open up and give you some context, it's either because they don't know or they just want to take a look. And it's fine to take a look. I'll still show people this and that, but I always try and ask a couple of questions like, hey, help me understand what's going to be most relevant to you so I can only show you the important bits. If you find yourself opening up a demo and just walking through, this is what the admin panel looks like, this is how you add a new user, you've probably gone too far. If you're going to do a demo for somebody, you want to show them the magic moment. And everybody's going to have a different magic moment based on the value that they're going to get out of your software. So here's your homework. Next sales call, ask one of these qualifying questions. You'll be shocked at how many people will actually just tell you. This isn't a sales trick. This isn't some secret NLP handshake that you're going to say these words and buyers are magically going to buy from you. This is just two humans having a conversation and asking about where do we actually stand in the situation. So stop wasting your time on people that haven't committed to change so that you can focus on the ones that have already decided to solve it. The ones that when you ask the question, it might surprise you. If this video helped you, subscribe for more sales tips that actually work and drop a comment. Let me know what's the biggest sales mistake that you see founders making. If you prefer text, you can subscribe to the newsletter at foundersedition.co. Thanks. I'll see you next time.